In a world ruled by alphas, betas, and omegas, power decides everything. And sometimes survival requires a sacrifice no one could imagine. This is the story of Elias, a fallen Omega who will change the fate of an entire empire. Elias is known as a lost Omega, someone who once held great status, but now lives under constant political pressure. Beautiful, calm, and intelligent, Elias is someone who always looks at the bigger picture. But despite his elegance, his life is anything but peaceful. To protect the life of his adopted son, Elias is forced into a political marriage with Lancer Rodriguez, an extremely powerful alpha with absolute authority, a man feared throughout the empire. On the surface, the marriage looks like a strategic alliance, but behind the scenes it is nothing more than a sacrifice. Elias agrees to marry Lancer only to keep his child safe. However, destiny has something far more dangerous waiting for them. On the night of the wedding, something goes terribly wrong. Sol, Elias's adopted son and a young 16-year-old alpha, is accidentally poisoned. The poison is deadly, and if nothing is done, Sol will die. Watching his child suffer, Elias realizes he only has one choice left. He thinks to himself, if I don't stop this, Sol will die from the poison. The only possible solution is a forbidden technique, a dangerous ability, tied to his half-demon bloodline, a power that should never be used. Elias decides to perform an ancient ritual. His plan is simple but terrifying. He will send his own soul into Sol's body, and by doing this, Elias can use his powerful spiritual energy to suppress the poison-destroying Sol. But this ritual comes with a cost. Once the ritual is complete, their souls will switch bodies. As the ritual activates, magical energy fills the room and a glowing magic circle forms around them. Elias holds Sol gently and whispers the final words. Soul exchange. In an instant, their souls swap. Now everything has changed. The calm and intelligent Omega Elias is now living inside the body of Sol Griffin, a 16-year-old alpha, and Sol is now inside the body of Elias. Their identities are completely reversed. But the real problem hasn't even started yet, because Elias, now trapped in Sol's body, must soon face someone extremely dangerous. His new alpha husband, Lancer Rodriguez, a man known for his sharp instincts and terrifying authority. The question is, will Lancer discover the truth behind this soul swap? Or will Elias be able to keep the secret hidden? And this is only the beginning of the story, a powerful alpha, a secret soul exchange, and a marriage filled with danger. What will happen when Lancer gets closer to the new soul? And what if he realizes the person inside that body is actually his Omega bride? The real story starts now. On the night of the royal wedding in the Lorraine Empire, the palace is quiet beneath the dark sky. Inside the grand chamber, the newly crowned king stands before his Omega bride. Looking at the beautiful silver-haired Omega, he says calmly, Elias, my queen, drink this glass of wine. His voice is gentle, but there is something unsettling behind it. He lifts the glass toward Elias and adds with a faint smile, this will help you serve me better tonight. Elias immediately feels uneasy. His red eyes tremble slightly as he looks at the wine. He whispers nervously, no, I don't want to drink it. I don't want to serve a tyrant like you. But the powerful alpha in front of him only smiles more coldly. Leaning closer, he lifts Elias's chin and asks in a low voice, what? You don't want to drink? Before Elias can resist, the alpha forces the glass to his lips. You don't have the right to decide, he says. The wine pours down Elias's throat as he struggles weakly, coughing and trying to push the glass away. No, stop. But it is too late. The glass falls to the floor with a sharp sound as Elias staggers forward. Watching him closely, the alpha smirks with dark amusement. So the proud Elias, who always acts so untouchable, is actually just a trembling little cat in bed. He grips Elias firmly, clearly enjoying the reaction. Interesting. I like it. Let's see what other surprises you still have for me. As the alpha pulls him closer, Elias feels his body burning uncontrollably. His breathing becomes heavier, and his face turns red. His body begins responding to the alpha's overwhelming presence. In the darkness of the royal chamber, Elias realizes with fear that the situation is slipping completely out of his control, and the night has only just begun. A soft gasp escapes his lips, but he realizes he no longer has the strength to push the alpha away. The shattered wine glass lies on the floor beside scattered rose petals, and a dark red stain, spreading across the white sheets. While Elias's thoughts race in panic, this shouldn't be happening. This can't continue. Because the truth is something no one here knows. He isn't Elias at all. The one trapped in this body is actually Soul Griffin, the adopted son of Elias. His mind flashes back to the events that led to this moment. 1 month earlier, the Lorraine Empire launched a brutal invasion against the Demon Clan, turning their homeland into a battlefield of fire and destruction. At the center of that invasion stood the ruthless human Commander Lancer, leader of the Royal Knights, whose overwhelming power forced the demon soldiers to retreat again and again. Even Elias, Soul's father and the strongest demon mage, was defeated by him. Standing over the ruined battlefield, Lancer looked down at Elias with cold amusement and asked calmly, "Kill you? That would be a waste." Then he added with a slight smile, "That face of yours isn't bad, and my queen's seat is still empty. So instead, become my queen." Faced with humiliation and defeat, Elias refused without hesitation, declaring firmly that he would rather die than submit to a human tyrant, unaware that this decision would eventually lead both father and son toward the dangerous fate unfolding. Commander Lancer Rodriguez looked down coldly and said, "I don't like it when people go against my will. Guards, bring them here." Moments later, 2 young men were dragged forward by the soldiers. Seeing them, Elias's eyes widened in shock. "Soul, Los," he shouted. The blonde young alpha, Soul Griffin, struggled desperately in the soldier's grip and cried out, "Father," his voice urgent and desperate. "Don't worry about me. Run now." The soldiers forced them to kneel while Lancer calmly rode forward on horseback, his sword gleaming under the fading sunlight. With a faint, cruel smile, he said, "If you refuse to marry me, then prepare the funerals for your 2 sons." Hearing those words, Elias froze. Blood trickled from the corner of his lips as fear and fury filled his eyes. "Don't touch them," he shouted hoarsely. After a long moment of silence, Elias finally lowered his head and said through clenched teeth, "Fine, I agree to marry you." Lancer gave a satisfied smile and ordered coldly, "Take all of them back to the palace." Soon after, the preparations for the royal wedding began immediately. Not long later, the grand ceremony was held at the Imperial Cathedral, and the entire empire witnessed the political marriage between the powerful Alpha King, Lancer Rodriguez, and the defeated demon Omega, Elias. After the ceremony ended, a servant respectfully reported, "Your Majesty, the wedding ritual has been completed. You must go outside to greet the guests. Please allow the queen to return to the bridal chamber first." Then the maid added, softly to Elias, "His Majesty Lancer was worried you might feel lonely, so he specially allowed young Master Soul to come speak with you." Inside the quiet room, Soul rushed forward anxiously and grabbed Elias's hands. "Father, both my brother and I know you only agreed because of us. But Lancer is cruel and ruthless. Today the palace guards are relatively relaxed, so please run away now." Elias looked at his son calmly and gently stroked his cheek. Soul's golden eyes filled with worry as he continued, "Brother Los is still locked in the dungeon. If we escape, what will happen to him?" Elias smiled faintly and whispered softly, "You and your brother are the most precious treasures in my life. For you, I can sacrifice everything." Elias looked calmly at his son and said softly, "I've already made my decision. You don't need to persuade me anymore." Seeing Soul standing there, worried and exhausted, he added gently, "You've also been locked up these past few days. You probably haven't had anything decent to eat." He picked up a small plate from the table and smiled faintly. "Here, have a piece of cake first." Soul hesitated for a moment, but the sweet smell tempted him, and he took a big bite. As he chewed, guilt filled his eyes, and he muttered, "It's because of us that you ended up in this situation. If my brother and I were stronger, that commander wouldn't have been able to capture us." Suddenly, Soul coughed violently. "Cough." Elias's expression changed instantly. "What's wrong?" But before Soul could answer, blood spilled from his mouth and dripped onto the floor. Elias shouted in shock, "Soul!" The plate fell from Soul's hands as his body trembled, and he collapsed to the ground, clutching his throat. Struggling to breathe, Soul whispered painfully, "The cake. It's poisoned." Elias's eyes widened in horror. In his mind, he quickly realized the terrifying truth. Soul's blood could normally purify toxins, but this poison was different. It was reacting violently with the power of both human and demon blood within Soul's body. Worse still, Soul's spiritual strength was still too weak to control the surge of energy. If this continued, his body would collapse completely. Elias grabbed Soul's face urgently and shouted, "Soul, look at me." But he knew there was only one desperate solution left. If this continues, the demon cells inside him will die. The only way to save him now was to release Soul's suppressed power. Gathering his strength, Elias activated a forbidden spell and declared, "Soul Exchange." A brilliant magic circle burst into life beneath them as purple energy spiraled through the room. Their bodies trembled while the ritual forced their spirits to separate and cross paths. In the next instant, the exchange was complete. The soul of Elias entered Soul's body, while Soul's soul was pushed into Elias's body. As the glowing energy faded, Soul, now inside Elias's body, staggered forward and caught the collapsing figure before him. Shouting in panic, "Soul!" The two of them stood frozen in shock, realizing that their souls had truly switched places. Elias looks into Soul's eyes with deep concern and asks softly, "Are you all right?" Soul stares back in confusion, realizing something is terribly different as he sees his own face reflected in Elias's crimson eyes. Elias gently holds his shoulders and explains calmly, "Soul, I have exchanged our souls. From this moment on, you are Elias." The air grows heavy as he continues in a serious voice, reminding him that this secret must never be revealed. This is extremely important. No one can know the truth, especially our enemies. Do you understand? Outside the palace, thunder rolls across the night sky, lightning flashing over the royal castle as if announcing the beginning of something dangerous. Inside the quiet bridal chamber, Soul's mind races with panic. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be here. Yet the situation quickly becomes more complicated when the powerful Alpha King, Lancer Rodriguez, approaches his new queen. The room is filled with soft flowers and candlelight as Lancer studies Elias closely, noticing something unusual. "Your scent is very unique," he murmurs thoughtfully. "Sweet, yet strangely cold. Nothing like a normal Omega." Soul, now trapped in Elias's body, feels overwhelmed and uneasy. "Of course it's different," he thinks nervously, "because I'm actually Soul, an Alpha." Trying to stay calm, he struggles to hide the truth while Lancer's sharp gaze studies him carefully. The king smirks slightly, intrigued by the mystery, while Soul desperately hopes the secret will remain hidden. If the king discovers the truth about the soul exchange, everything could collapse. Trying to escape the moment, Soul suddenly calls out for his father in panic, hoping for help. At that exact moment, the door opens and someone rushes inside, creating an unexpected interruption. Lancer immediately reacts, his voice turning cold as he orders the newcomer to stop and remain where they are. The powerful King Lancer Rodriguez slowly lifts a leather strap in his hand and says calmly, "Everyone, come watch a little performance." The atmosphere instantly becomes tense. Soul, trapped inside Elias's body, looks confused and asks nervously, "Performance? What do you mean?" Before he can react, Lancer suddenly moves behind him and pulls the strap around his neck. Soul gasps in shock, struggling slightly as Lancer leans close and whispers with a dangerous smile. At that moment, the real Elias, now inside Soul's body, shouts anxiously, "Soul." But Lancer only chuckles and says coldly, "Elias, you hate it when I touch you, don't you? Fine, I won't touch you tonight. All I need is for you to do something simple." The room falls silent as the meaning behind his words becomes clear. Soul's face turns pale with embarrassment and fear, realizing the king is deliberately creating a humiliating situation to force Elias to submit. Lancer tightens his grip slightly and warns calmly, "You'd better hurry. If your son's body can't endure it, something unfortunate might happen." Hearing this, Elias freezes. His mind is filled with conflict and desperation. What should I do? How can I let this happen in front of my own child? But if he refuses, Soul could be seriously hurt. The pressure in the room becomes unbearable. Finally, Elias clenches his hands tightly and shouts, "Stop." His voice echoes through the chamber as he lowers his head and speaks with trembling determination. "Your Majesty, please. If this is what you want, then touch me instead." Lancer pauses for a moment before letting out a faint laugh. Looking down at Elias with cold amusement, he says quietly, "Now you're begging me? It's already too late." But Elias steps forward again, his eyes filled with pain yet determination, and says softly, "As long as you spare my son, I will do whatever you ask." Tears slide down his face as he forces himself to endure the humiliation, knowing this is the only way to protect the person he loves most. Watching the scene unfold, Rodriguez looks down at Elias with a calm but commanding gaze and says softly, "It's you who said it." In the tense silence of the room, Soul, whose soul is now inside Elias's body, feels his face heat with embarrassment and confusion while Lancer pulls him closer, clearly testing his reactions. On the floor nearby, the real Elias, now inside Soul's body, coughs weakly and struggles to breathe, clearly shaken by everything that has happened. Without showing much emotion, Lancer calls the guards and orders them to take Soul Malvern away. The soldiers quickly obey, dragging the young man toward the door. Watching the scene unfold, Soul, still trapped in Elias's body, feels panic rising in his chest. What should I do now? He thinks desperately as the situation spirals out of control. Lancer, however, remains calm and confident, leaning closer as if he is enjoying the tension in the room. The night grows heavier as he continues to press Elias down onto the bed, whispering that he wants to see just how long his proud queen can endure. The scene fades, and the next morning rumors spread quickly throughout the palace. Many nobles are shocked to hear that Elias is still alive and that the king has not left the queen's chamber since the night before. Among those discussing the news is Carrie Ryan, one of Lancer's favored consorts, a noble-born aristocrat known for his pride and sharp temper. When he hears the rumors, Carrie's expression darkens with irritation. A servant explains that because the queen has entered the royal palace, it is natural that conflicts might arise within the royal court. Carrie scoffs at the idea, clearly offended that a newcomer could disturb his position. Holding a delicate golden bracelet in his hand, he smiles coldly and says that while Elias may be the queen, that does not mean he can challenge him directly just yet. Instead, he plans to teach a lesson to the queen's two sons. With a confident smile, Carrie declares that the royal palace belongs to him and that the inner court is his territory. His voice sharpens as he calls the situation humiliating and demands that the truth be acknowledged. Standing before several young men, including the two princes connected to Elias, Carrie raises the bracelet as evidence and asks whether they still intend to deny what has become obvious. Then, with a calculating expression, he introduces himself proudly as Carrie Ryan, the favored consort of Lancer Rodriguez, born into a prestigious noble family and raised with great privilege since childhood, a man known throughout the court for his arrogance and determination. As the tension builds inside the palace, it becomes clear that the arrival of Elias has begun to shift the balance of power within the royal court, and the quiet conflict between the queen and the king's favored consort is only just beginning. If it weren't for Commander Lancer insisting on making him the queen, that position should have belonged to Carrie Ryan. Burning with jealousy, Carrie secretly plans a trap to embarrass Elias and ruin his reputation. He deliberately uses a bracelet as false evidence and accuses Soul and Los of stealing it. Inside the palace hall, Carrie speaks confidently, claiming that there is a special treasure in the royal palace capable of temporarily revealing the past of an object. According to him, using that treasure would prove whether the bracelet was stolen by the two boys or not. But Elias quickly senses something strange. Normally, Soul would be too frightened to speak up in a situation like this. Yet now he is strangely calm. Even more suspicious, Soul has never paid attention to human affairs before. So how could he possibly know about such a palace treasure? Hearing the suggestion, Carrie's smile turns cold and calculating. He replies that using the royal treasure would require permission from the king. And since the king is currently resting, such a small matter should not disturb him. In truth, Carrie has carefully arranged this entire situation and has no intention of letting them escape his scheme, pretending to enforce discipline in the palace. He orders the guards to punish the two boys so everyone will know the consequences. of touching something that belongs to Carrie Ryan. However, a palace officer cautiously steps forward and reminds him that the two boys are still the queen's children, and if punishment is necessary, the king and queen should at least be informed first. Carrie's expression immediately darkens with anger. With a sharp motion, he lashes out and strikes the officer, declaring that the inner palace has always been under his control and questioning who would dare challenge his authority. The room falls silent as everyone witnesses his temper. Trying to end the matter quickly, a servant claims that the evidence is already clear and that the boys must have taken the bracelet. Carrie then calmly orders the guards to proceed with punishment. As the command is given, Sol and Lo struggle against the ropes holding them and shout that the investigation is not finished and that no one has the right to treat them unfairly. But before they can say anything more, a guard raises his hand and strikes Sol across the face. The sharp sound echoes through the hall as the tension in the palace grows heavier. With a cold smile, Carrie reminds everyone that the inner palace is under his authority and that anyone who disrespects him will remember this lesson. Sol glares back angrily, warning that abusing power like this will only bring consequences. But Carrie simply laughs and says the palace belongs to him, so no one will dare oppose him. Seeing Sol's defiance, Carrie pretends to be generous and announces that if Sol wants to take the punishment for his brother, then he will allow it. Los will receive 30 strikes, but Sol must endure 100 instead. Without hesitation, Sol agrees, refusing to let his brother suffer. At Carrie's command, the attendants begin carrying out the punishment. Sol struggles to stay conscious. Watching helplessly, Los cries out in fear, remembering how Sol had always protected him since they were children, even when things were difficult. In Sol's mind, memories flash of the two brothers growing up together, promising to look after each other no matter what happened. But now everything has changed, and Sol silently blames himself for being unable to protect his family from the cruel commander who forced them into this situation. As the punishment continues, Sol's anger slowly rises, and he finally refuses to endure it any longer. With sudden determination, he breaks free from the restraints, grabs the rod, and knocks it away from the attendant before pushing the others back. The room erupts into chaos as Carrie stares in disbelief at the sudden burst of strength. Furious, he orders the guards to capture Sol immediately. Several guards rush forward, drawing their weapons to block Sol's escape. Just as the situation becomes dangerously tense, a calm voice interrupts from the doorway. A nobleman named Dean, known as a respected royal prince, appears and asks what is happening so early in the morning. Carrie is clearly surprised by the unexpected arrival and asks why the prince is here. With a polite smile, Dean explains that he was passing by on official business and heard the commotion, so he came to see what was going on. The hall falls silent as everyone realizes that this unexpected witness may change the outcome of the entire situation. Prince Dean steps forward calmly and speaks in a gentle tone, saying that the young ones are still inexperienced and have only recently arrived in the palace, so it is natural if they do not fully understand the court's etiquette and make a few mistakes. With a polite smile, he lightly places his hand on Sol's head as if calming a restless child and suggests that perhaps the queen consort might consider showing some leniency this time. His relaxed attitude contrasts sharply with the tense atmosphere in the room, making it difficult for anyone to openly oppose him. Hearing Dean's words, the queen consort narrows his eyes but finally speaks coldly, saying that for the sake of Dean's face, he will let the matter go for now, though he warns them not to cause trouble for him again in the future. Sol quickly bows his head and apologizes respectfully, promising that it will not happen again and asking for forgiveness this time. The queen consort turns away with visible irritation while Dean calmly thanks him for his generosity, and the tense situation in the hall finally settles down. Soon after, outside the palace building, Dean helps carry the injured Los away while Sol anxiously says that he can walk on his own. Los insists that Sol should not move, because he was the one who received the punishment and the medicine he took earlier has not fully taken effect yet. Watching his brother struggle, Sol feels a mix of guilt and determination. In his mind, he reflects that although he does not understand why Prince Dean suddenly helped them, following Dean's advice seems like the safest choice for now. Sol apologizes softly to Los, feeling responsible for the trouble, but Los simply reassures him that protecting each other is what family should do. As they speak, Prince Dean approaches again with his usual gentle smile. Sol thanks him sincerely for stepping in earlier, but Dean casually replies that there is no need for gratitude, because he is Lancer's uncle, which technically makes him their uncle as well. So helping family is only natural. Before leaving, he gently pats Sol on the head again and reminds him to return and take care of his injuries properly, though he adds with a quiet smile that he has some matters to handle first. With that, Dean waves goodbye and walks away, leaving Sol watching his back thoughtfully. Although Dean appears kind and friendly, Sol cannot shake the strange feeling that something about him is unusual. Prince Dean might not be an ordinary human at all, but someone who belongs to the same kind as them. Morning arrives slowly in the royal palace, and Elias wakes with a dull headache, his memories of the previous night still hazy. The strange warmth lingering in his body makes him uneasy, and he realizes that the king's overwhelming presence has affected him far more than he expected. Trying to calm himself, he mutters that something about this situation feels wrong, wondering why the king's aura seems so intense and difficult to ignore. Soon a maid enters the room and politely informs him that breakfast has already been prepared and that everyone is waiting in the dining hall. Elias reluctantly joins the others at the long palace table, where the atmosphere feels tense and formal. As the meal begins, he quietly observes the strict etiquette of the royal court and notices how precise everything is, from the placement of the utensils to the order of the dishes. When someone pours milk before the first course, Elias immediately points out that the dining rules are being ignored, calmly stating that milk should never be served before the main dish. King wipes his mouth calmly and announces that the time for breakfast is over, explaining that according to the palace schedule, no one is allowed to continue eating once the designated time has passed. Elias protests that he has barely eaten anything, but the maid apologizes politely and explains that the king himself ordered the schedule to be strictly followed. Annoyed by the rigid rules, Elias silently complains that the man is incredibly irritating and overly strict. Deciding he has had enough of the uncomfortable meal, Elias leaves the dining hall and heads toward another part of the palace with determination. He orders the guards to open the door to the dungeon, explaining about his children being kept there. As the heavy door opens, Elias steps inside and immediately sees the two young men he has been worried about. One of them is carefully supporting the other, who looks weak after the punishment he endured earlier. Shocked and concerned, Elias rushes toward them and calls out their names, asking what happened and why they look injured. The blonde boy looks up and explains that someone punished them earlier, but he tries to reassure Elias that they are still all right. Hearing this, Elias feels a wave of anger and guilt, realizing that his children suffered because of the political struggles inside the palace. Yet despite everything, Sol says that he only wanted to make his father proud and that he hopes Elias will not worry too much. Moved by the words, Elias pulls him into a warm embrace, promising silently that no matter what happens next, he will protect his children and make sure they never have to face such hardship again. Sol listens silently, while Elias explains that he has secretly gathered a large amount of magical information in a hidden notebook and will study it carefully, hoping it will help them escape their current situation. For now, he asks Sol to stay close to him and behave normally so no one in the palace becomes suspicious. After speaking for a moment, Elias hugs Sol warmly and assures him that once he recovers his strength, he will find a way to bring both Sol and Los safely away from the palace. Later, Elias walks alone through the grand halls of the royal residence, thinking quietly about everything that has happened and wondering who in the palace can truly be trusted. Determined to learn more about the people around him, he decides to observe the king's consort Carrie more closely. Soon after, Elias arrives at the beautiful royal garden known as the Palace Flower Courtyard, where nobles often gather for tea and conversation. There he meets Carrie and several attendants enjoying an elegant afternoon tea. Carrie greets him politely, but with a subtle hint of rivalry, complimenting the pastries and offering tea while carefully studying. Elias calmly smiles to himself, realizing that Carrie is very different from what he originally expected. Soon after, the scene shifts to a quiet garden where Elias sits at a small table with Carrie and another attendant, enjoying tea together. Carrie politely hands him a cup and says, "Elias, please drink this while it's still warm," and Elias thanks him before reaching out to take it. However, as Carrie passes the cup, his hands tremble slightly and the tea almost spills, making him quickly react with surprise. Noticing this, Elias calmly asks why Carrie's hands are shaking even though he is still young. Hearing this question makes Carrie a little nervous, but Elias simply accepts the cup and holds it steadily. At that moment, Elias remembers something from his childhood. An elderly caretaker named Bina, who used to look after him, also had trembling hands whenever she served drinks. And because of that, Elias had long since gotten used to carefully receiving cups without spilling them. As this memory fades, Elias quietly lifts the cup and takes a sip of tea while remaining calm and composed. Meanwhile, Carrie watches him with a frustrated expression, clearly annoyed that his earlier sarcastic remark had no effect at all, and he mutters angrily that Elias dared to respond to him with such indifference, warning that Elias should just wait and see what happens next. Elias calmly looked at the dessert in his hand and commented that the pastries were honestly not very impressive. At that moment, a palace attendant approached respectfully and greeted him, presenting a red flower and saying that the flower was very beautiful and suited him well. The attendant politely suggested placing the flower in Elias's hair as decoration. However, this gesture was actually part of Carrie's quiet plan, as Carrie believed the flower pollen would cause an uncomfortable allergic reaction and embarrass Elias in front of everyone. But Elias simply looked at the flower and replied calmly that the color did not really match him. Then, in a sudden and unexpected moment, Elias turned the situation around. Instead of using the flower himself, he casually reached forward and placed the same flower into Carrie's hair instead, saying in a relaxed tone that the flower actually matched Carrie's outfit much better. A moment later, the effect appeared almost immediately. Carrie suddenly felt his face itching and burning as small red spots began appearing across his skin. Realizing what was happening, he panicked and shouted that something was wrong with his face. Elias quickly stepped closer, looking surprised and asking what had happened, but Carrie angrily pulled away, accusing Elias and shouting that there was no need to pretend to be kind. He insisted that his condition was clearly caused by Elias, while Elias simply stood there observing the chaotic situation as Carrie continued complaining loudly about what had just happened. Carrie accidentally loses his balance near the edge of the fountain and slips into the water with a loud splash. The surrounding nobles gasp in surprise while Elias looks on calmly, realizing that the situation has taken an unexpected turn. As Carrie struggles in the water, the peaceful garden scene suddenly becomes chaotic, leaving everyone wondering how this strange confrontation between the queen and the king's consort will affect the fragile balance of power. Just then, a deep voice interrupts the scene as King Lancer Rodriguez arrives, his sharp eyes scanning the garden while he asks calmly what exactly happened here. The nobles immediately fall silent under his imposing presence,